I grew up on the East Coast, and I grew up in a family that put a high priority on education and family, values, and being proper and efficient and minding your manners. They cared about us, and they cared about our education, and there was many things that were just positive. So when I was in high school, when I turned 15, it was around 15 or 16, I got in with a person who really influenced me in a bad way, lying to my parents, going places, taking the car out when I didn't have my license, going to places, meeting friends, right about that age of 15, 16, you know, just having a license and having the freedom of a license, you know, just opened up to me a world that I could just be my own person and grow up and have my car and all these things and be separate from my parents. Really felt like I was coming out from underneath them, and part of how I did that was I lied a lot to them. I would lie about where I'm going. I'd just get in with the wrong crowds and be with the wrong people, and my education really started going downhill. I'd spend the summers, a lot of the summer times, at beach houses with friends with no supervision whatsoever. So I would leave for 6 weeks at a time and go to beach houses and just be in with boardwalk crowds and anyone else. And wherever that led, it led, and I had no really thought. I lied a lot to my parents, which was of course terrible. Now I can look back and know how wrong and how that took me down a path that ultimately just was really tragic. So through high school, I felt like I was living this double life. So everyone knew my family in the town that we were in, and in the high school was a small high school, and so we were upstanding people. You know, we played sports, we got good grades. They all knew my brothers and sisters. I was the youngest child. And, but I was really living this double life. I was even spending time with people outside of my high school, and older people, and people who were drinking and doing drugs, and I was experimenting with different things, and I was smoking. I thought I was doing it in secret, but you can't really hide smoke. But no one ever, you know, really challenged me with it. I know people must have noticed in my household and my friends, but no one ever tried to help me here. But I just continued to lie worse. There was no sorrow or repentance or change or anything like that. Because I was filled with hormones and lust and just different things of that age, I went a direction that, you know, I mean, it's hard to talk about. I don't like to talk about it or think about it, but these are the facts, and I know that it's common. Now I know. I had a sister who was 4 years older than I was, and when she went to college, she met some people who were really serious about following and obeying Jesus. So she would come home on the holidays, you know, come home for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we'd all kind of gather up together as a family, and she'd start talking to us about, you know, does anyone want to hear what Jesus said about this topic? Or y'all are drinking over there. Do you want to hear, you know, about some of the things of what God says about people who just follow in their flesh and worldly ways and that they can't hear him? Or do you want to hear about the traditions of men, you know, and how that nullifies God's word? And have you ever thought about why people celebrate Christmas and what that means, or if it's in the scriptures? And she'd say these things, and we just tuned her out. We thought she was crazy. She was a Jesus freak. She was going some way south, and personally, I just tuned her out. I didn't want to hear what she had to say. It bothered me. It disrupted our family time. It was a nuisance. We used to have, you know, fun at Christmas. We used to open presents and dance and eat and drink and have, you know, all this time. And here she was challenging us in our, just our family time. And so at that time, when my sister would be saying to me, do you want to hear what Jesus said? I would tell her, I'm a Christian. Don't bother me with your ideas and the things that you want me to believe. That's your opinion. I'm a Christian. Let it go. Everyone can just be happy here, and you need to be stop disrupting us and stop ruining our family. It's you're hurting us. Instead of our nice family get-togethers, now we would be crying because we had this disruptor, and she was trying to be gentle and I think just be faithful to what Jesus wanted her to do, and she was very willing to say and to poke and prod and just simply just read scripture, which really made me mad. And so I'd go on my way, and so for about 4 years, this went on. And then I went to college. I went to a Big Ten university, and with that came a whole new level of sin. So now not only was I doing the same things I was doing in high school, but I didn't have any responsibility and zero oversight. I was in fraternities, I was at parties off campus, I was going to class completely hungover, there on my dad's dime, trying to get an education. They were so proud of me being off in a great college, and I was going to do wonderful things, and I was their little darling, and I had all this stuff going on all the time. And the whole fraternity scene, the bars, the dormitories, everything, it was really tragic. I mean, I think about the expectation of going to college and how there's a certain expectation, there's a certain mentality of what that even means, and oh, it's so good, your children are off to college. I think about that now. Oh, your children are in college. And if anyone wants to talk to me for about 10 minutes or half an hour about what really happens at college, at least at the Big Ten university that I went to, I mean, I've made a lot of apologies since then to people not only being led into sin, but leading others into sin. So, obviously that was a life that was godless and without God. When I think about the number of times that I could have died, or the number of times that I could have been severely damaged and severely hurt and been in a heap of trouble, been in jail the rest of my life, been in a hospital the rest of my life. I mean, it really is amazing that that didn't happen. I mean, God, I look back at it now and I know that God was even protecting me, even in the middle of all of my sin and all of the things that I was involved in, that, there wasn't tragedy. There was tragedy, but there wasn't, I didn't die. I didn't die without him, so, I'm thankful. And, I know now that it's just part of his story in me, and so I'm glad to testify to his goodness. So I went overseas, and when I was overseas, I went to France actually and spent some time in southern France, and I met a lot of Arab men and women, and so then I started spending a lot of time with people from northern Africa, so Tunisia and just different places, and a lot of Muslims. And well, I'll also say during this time that so when I would go home at the holidays, my older sister was still bringing God's word to me and still saying things, and she would risk, and I was still upset with her. I didn't want to be anything like her. I didn't care about her values. I had my own life. I was puffed up in a major way because everyone I talked to, and of my family and friends, just that's what they did. They just puffed me up, and I looked for that. I really lived on flattery. Flattery was a fuel that kept me going and kept me confident and, being flattered in every way. Oh, she's going overseas. Oh, she's, going to this university and doing such a great job. And so I was living a double life. There's no question about that. By my senior year in college, I was 80% sure that I was going to marry someone from Tunisia, and he wanted to take me there. And at that time, actually, my mom sent a newspaper article to me, and it was about American women who would be married to those in other countries, and then they would be stuck in those countries. And I honestly believe that without just intervention, that was the way that I was going, that I would have just gone. Again, it was flattery. When I think about it now, it was because this particular person was so good at flattering, and that was just fuel for my life that would just take me anywhere. Flattery could get me to do anything, anywhere, anyway. And it's why I was just led around by my own evil desire to be noticed and cared about and puffed up and all of these things. So my last year at school, I was at a party with some friends, and we were drinking, and we got into this big conversation about God and religion and after what happens when you die. And I remember saying there, someone asked me, "Are you a Christian?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a Christian. I've always been a Christian. I grew up a Christian. I'm a Christian." And so this was in January of 1989, and it really bothered me after I said that, and for that whole season after that, it really bothered me. Two things. The conflict that I had was that I was so confident and declaring that I was a Christian, but meanwhile, I had these seeds from my sister that, will you read Jesus's words? Will you listen? Will you care? Can I show you something? And how violently I opposed that. I just hated it. But I went on my way, and I graduated in May, and I got a good job right outside of New York City, and I was with a big marketing firm. And so I was really on my path. I was going to New York, I had an apartment, I had a good job, and I also, at the same time, even though I had a good job and a good apartment, I had a couple roommates I was living with, I was still drinking and still partying and still wasting a lot of time and doing a lot of things that just who I was still. And so I was still living a double life of who everyone thought I was and who I really was, and lay down at night and put my head on the pillow, and I just knew on my inside that this is not what life is about. Or somehow I was miserable, really. I was just miserable. I had this thought in my mind of, when am I going to be happy? When is that going to happen? When am I going to be fulfilled? When am I going to know that this is what life is about? And I was always deferring that and saying, maybe when I go to college, I'll be happy. Maybe when I get a good job, I'll be happy. And so I was always kind of putting that off, but deep on the inside, just never really getting there. It was always something in the future. And I remember thinking, maybe when I get married, I'll be happy. Or maybe when I have children. And I thought, oh no, I don't think I can get married because I know I would get divorced. I'm just too hard to live with I just had that thought in my mind that probably is not going to happen. And so around that time, my older sister had a child. It was the first grandchild, and we were all really excited about the first grandchild. And so I went we were getting together on a Labor Day weekend for a big family picnic, and I went, and she came and got to see her little 3-month-old baby, and it was so precious and special. And there's something about just seeing her with the baby that really just kind of shook me up, like something about life and meaning of life and things. And I said to her, I miss you. I want to be close to you, something like that. And she said, we could be closer than you ever imagined if you'd give your life to Jesus and be his person. And we cried, and there was different things that, just the seed of that. And that same weekend, I went to a church service with my dad to a Lutheran church. I just was paying attention this time, and anyway, the verse of the day, or what they read, was that unless you hate your mother and your father and your very life, you cannot be my disciple. It was just a seed. I think it was a seed for me. When I think about it, on the way driving to my grandmother's house for this reunion, I was smoking and listening to rock and roll music and had my windows down and speeding up a storm getting there. And on the way back, I was just looking for Christian music on stations and trying to find someone who was talking about God. It didn't matter who, but something changed right in that moment, that somehow I cared about something. God got my attention in a way that was turning a corner for me, where I was ready to maybe listen. So I got home, and I wrote my sister a letter, and I told her that I was willing now to listen to what she said. It was a real definite point in time for me because I had some gold-laced stationery back in the days when people used to handwrite letters. So took out my gold-laced stationery and my nice pen, and I sat down at my desk and wrote this letter and said, I'm willing to listen to what you have to say. And I remember being on like the 8th story of the office building, and I had this letter, and I had it in one of those mailboxes that, it's just a chute that the letter falls down, and it was just perched there, and I thought, if I send this, I have to listen. I know that she's going to be calling, and I signed my name to this, so now she has proof now, and she's going to try to help me. So this has to be serious that I'm really saying this. And I mailed the letter, and we laughed because she got it within a day or two, and it didn't have a stamp on it. So we laugh now because we thought, well, God hand delivered that letter, made sure she got it. But anyway, after that, she sent me a Bible, and suggested where to start reading in the Bible, and I started reading and planting seeds and listening to things, and things were just coming to light for me. I started talking to God. That's when I started actually talking to God and believing that He was alive and that He cared about me, and thinking about Jesus and talking to Jesus and telling Him, or asking Him, are you alive? Is this real? And I'd have these things happen that were just opening my eyes a bit. And I was starting to believe and starting to talk to God and read the Bible and care in a way that I hadn't cared. And my sister helped me a lot, and different people. She kind of helped me meet some people who also cared about Jesus and who could possibly help me. So I had some help along the way in that regard. But even, I was still living in two different universes. So I had this place where I was really seeking and caring and planting a lot of good seeds and reading the whole New Testament and getting a lot of help. But I also had my drinking, partying, and even, I think my last memory of going into New York City at that time was for a Halloween party. I got stuck in the city that night again, and even I'm very close to my conversion to the day when I relinquished, but even 2 weeks prior to that, I was still living, having these times of just partying and revelry and brushing up with death, even up to the last. And so I know there was a war going on for the decision for the way that I was going to go. My sister invited me to come out and visit her. So while I was visiting my sister and her family and other people who just really cared passionately about Jesus and His kingdom, and which even for me to talk about His kingdom, that was just a little strange for me because I lived in America. I didn't know what they were talking about, a kingdom. That sounded really strange to me, like this sounds like a fairy tale, but I knew that I was miserable and I knew that I needed help, and so I told her I wanted to listen, that I think there's something there, and I wanted to care, and I wanted to listen to what she had to say. So, different things happened that weekend. Different people were trying to help me or explain. I'd have questions, and they would help explain things to me. And so, on Sunday morning, November 12th, 1989, which is 28 years ago, we went out to a place to play volleyball, and which was just really sweet because my sister knew that I liked to play volleyball, and so she organized, a time where just some people could come out and play volleyball. And it was at this camp that had a gymnasium, and there was a lake outside and a place to run around and stuff. And I think they were all praying for me and really pulling for me and really wanting me to see and just relinquish everything that I thought that I had. So I had one guy sitting down next to me on the bench, and he said, what hinders you? Why not just give up your life and follow Jesus and let go of all these things? He's alive. And that was a lot of what people were saying that was just new to me. I just hadn't considered this, that Jesus is alive. I don't know how you can sit in services for 20-some years and never consider that Jesus is alive. But at this juncture in my life, when I was actually starting to believe and turn to God and talk to Him about His Son and talk to Him about His Son dying on the cross, talk to Him about needing to be forgiven, that at this time, it meant a lot to me, and I was really, really believing that Jesus was alive. So what am I going to do about that? Am I just going to go my own way, or am I going to follow the King of Kings? No, this is my decision. So this guy sat down next to me and said, what are you going to do? You could get on that plane and plane could go down, you could die. Where are you going to be? What are you going to have to show for any of your life? And there was something in me that said, I'm afraid to die. I don't know what's going to happen. So, that helped me, that I could die at any moment, and that's just true. I should have died many times through high school and college and going overseas, and I could die on the way home. So I had a few people say, just go take a walk around the lake out there and just think about it. This is, obviously, it's your decision. Every person has to make their own decision what they're going to do with the Son of God, what they're going to do with what they know, whether they're going to follow Him and obey and care and love and lay down their life, or whether they're going to just live for themselves. So why don't you just take a walk around the lake and just think about it. We're for you. Whatever you decide, we're for you. So I walked around the lake, and I didn't really know much in the scriptures. I knew some, I had been reading, but as I was walking around the lake, I thought, I think there was a story once of someone who saw water and then they were just baptized because they saw water, and they said, what hinders me? And I was thinking that, so when I got back to the gymnasium, I said, what hinders me? There's water. So we went out to the lake and went into the middle of the lake, and one of the guys that I had known because he was a friend of my sister's and I had met him before, he baptized me, and everyone cheered, and it was wonderful. And the only thing I remember about that day, I don't remember going through my story with everyone. I don't remember a lot of what people said that day, but what I do remember is that I was standing in the middle of the lake, and I just said, Jesus, you are Lord, and I'm going to follow you. And that was pretty much all I said. I didn't know anything, really, but that was settled. Another thing that was really settled is that I knew I had counted the cost of what it meant to forsake your life and to forsake your family and all that you knew, your mom and your dad and your brother and your sister and all of the holidays and all of the way of life that we had. I knew from watching my sister take a stand for Jesus and be true to Him, I knew that there was going to be an immediate cost involved for me, because now I was going to the other side. So I knew this wasn't going to be pretty on the home front with my folks, and I was their little darling, and now I was going to be a black sheep in their eyes. And so I had counted the costs a lot in regard to that over the months. So after being baptized in this lake, after walking around the lake and saying, I'm going to go for it, and I believe you are the Son of God and you are Lord, and declaring that to all of the seen and unseen world, the people that were there witnessing that, and all of heaven and earth. I was late for my plane getting back home. I laughed because I had pond water still in my hair. We left the gymnasium, and we all, many people went down to the airport, and these were the days where you didn't have checkpoints, so you didn't have to stop. You could go right up to the gate. So I'd say there was about 30 or 40 people running through the airport trying to get me to my plane on time, and sure enough, I missed it. That's okay. missed the plane, and then, just had time to spend with people at the airport until the next flight, and had to be rerouted and had to ride in a cab from New York City to Newark. And I just remember telling the cabbie and the guy in the cab that I was just baptized, and telling people on the plane, and telling everyone that I had just given my life to Jesus, and all of that. So got back home safely, had a big bouquet of flowers waiting for me the next day, and in it just said, "Behold, all things are new." So I have to say that after I got home, and it wasn't really until the next day that I could really put words on my eyes just being completely opened to a few things. First of all, my sin and the tragedy of all of that, and how hurtful that was to Jesus, and that he died for my sin. And the forgiveness was just, I can't even put words on it. What a wretch I am, yes. But the forgiveness, white as snow, yes. I never knew what a backpack that I was carrying around. I just didn't know the backpack that I was carrying around of sin. It was just enormous. And the forgiveness, to be washed clean of hundreds, thousands of infractions. You can't even quantify it. But to be washed clean of all that, who can wash away your sin? Only Jesus, only his blood. These are things that, I go back to often, every day. So this is very, very impactful. And so when you're carrying around 1,000 pounds and that is lifted, and now someone else has taken that on, and you can be free of all of that, it was a miracle. And not only that, but my eyes were just open to the unseen world. I was living in the seen world, and all the flesh and everything that drives the seen world, that's just who I was, and that's where I was. But just that my eyes were open, that there was a universe I had never, ever considered. It was just amazing to me. God, you're alive. Jesus, you have a kingdom. You sit in heaven. You're at the right hand of your Father. You are ruling and reigning. You have a plan. You want a people. I was ignorant in that I didn't really know, and I still don't, in many, many regards. But I think part of just the relinquishing of saying, Jesus, you are Lord, and then eyes open.